Uranus is in Taurus 17. The battle between the swords and the torches. Probably a tarot image. Swords, torches, they represent the principles of air and fire in the tarot. Dealing with inner confrontations. In seeking further and further clarification of a newly discovered truth, we are required to develop warrior qualities and fight the real forces of ignorance, domination, and greed. Indecision is a fatal flaw for a warrior who must reduce matters to good and evil, black and white, and choose definitively between this or that, necessity and desire. This is about life being a struggle between external and internal opposing forces and confronting inner dualities. The sense that we have of there being duality in life manifests in many, many ways, the spiritual and the material, I and thou, and many other ways. And we're prone to consider both sides. That's our inclination. And some people are quick to choose between the two, and some people aren't so quick. And they find that's a struggle. They seem to be on the horns of a dilemma sometimes, some people. And here we have an example of where it's actually quite difficult to choose. On the one hand, you have what the mind wants you to do. And this is very often based on teachings, philosophy, moral instructions, the right way according to society to do things on the one hand. And on the other hand, our instincts, our feelings, our sense of inner authenticity of what we choose, what we want. And it's not often, really, that we can go through life without coming up against a challenge between those two things. The right thing to do according to who we are authentically on the one hand, and the right thing to do according to what society wants us to do and to be on the other hand. And society's requirements of us are as right and proper and helpful as they are sometimes wrong and dictatorial and unnecessary and holding us in the past. So we have a battle between the past and the future to deal with as well. The force of modernity requires us to look at what we're holding on to in the past and decide whether or not it's time to change. And yet the force of tradition requires us to be careful about change. There's some bad things that can happen when change happens. And we've seen this in the current era where the beauty of our language, the English language I'm thinking of particularly, has been robbed by many people by misusing it in public because of social media. And it's one would be criticised for saying this, you're an old person, keep up with the times and so on. And yet the whole thing about holding on to tradition is that we actually can see, those of us who admire and appreciate tradition, we can see what the benefits are of something that takes decades to unfold, whereas somebody who hasn't had that experience, they just don't know that and can't imagine that. And here we are with the example that I've given, where the loss of our capacity to think is the effect of the loss of our capacity to speak clearly. We can't think clearly unless we speak clearly. So that's one example. Now, society will tell you, keep up to date, keep modern, do what everybody else is doing. And in this case, for my money, society's very wrong. It's very sad that that's happened. I feel that. That's my difficulty. I can understand the importance of it. I can give lip service to the importance of keeping up to date. And yet, the truth is, I feel disappointed about that. So there's the swords and the torches battling within me between those two things. And each of us has got this going on, some conflict, this inner conflict that we have, where we can see both points of view, and actually we can change our minds from time to time. Uranus going through that degree, that's going to bring up this question at the root level. And we're having to look very deep within us just to see whether or not that which we hold the torch for, in other words, what gives us a feeling of rightness, this feels right, that's going to be examined by Uranus on a radical level. Uranus really does get to the heart of the matter. It illuminates what has been in the shadow before. It's the lightning flash. It's not only fire, it's also light. So with Uranus we can see and understand what we couldn't understand before. And it may be that when it's going through this degree, we can get to understand that we're actually being forced, in a sense, by the rush of modernity to let go of something which is precious to us. And just to keep up with the acceleration of the times, we have to pay a price of acknowledging the beauty of tradition and holding on to that aspect of life. It's not only that we're talking about tradition here, it's just anything that you feel a deep warmth of love for. I had a look at what happened last time Uranus was in the 17th degree of Taurus. We go back to 1938 and 39, and you can imagine the background tension in life at that time as the war was just in the air, and some of the events that gave rise to the World War itself were already underway. The fighting had begun last time Uranus was here, so we're going back a long time, 84-year cycle. But two events are worth mentioning, I think. There was this guy called Corrigan who deserved the nickname Wrong Way. Wrong Way Corrigan got in an aeroplane with permission to fly from New York to California. Now, in an aeroplane, 1938, that was a big deal. And he actually ended up in Ireland, which is why he got his nickname. And he claimed that it was a navigational error because of cloud cover and lighting and difficulties and so on. It's generally thought that he was not telling the truth when he said that. But the point was that he had permission. Everything in his mind on that level of thinking allowed him to go one way, but he felt like going to Ireland. Corrigan sounds like an Irish name. So he was yearning for his home. And so he actually had to choose intuitively between California and Ireland, and he chose to go with the wands, what he held the torch for. Now, another event took place the following year when Uranus was in the 17th degree of Taurus, where a certain famous singer, let me just see if I can find her name, a very good singer, she was black, an African-American, called Marian Anderson, wanted to do her gig, her singing gig in a certain place that the Daughters of the American Revolution were managing. Now, these women they could trace their ancestry back to the original American birth of the American state, and they didn't really have a very liberal policy towards black people, and they denied her permission. Now, Eleanor Roosevelt was a member of this group, and she made a very public resignation, and she actually treated this event as very important. And so here she was choosing between what her society was, the Daughters of the American Revolution, and what she felt like doing, which she felt like allowing a brilliant singer to sing, notwithstanding any race or gender or anything like that. She was more liberal. And so she actually caused a change in that organization by choosing what she felt was right. So that was a rebellious act. in both cases, they were rebellious acts, Uranus, which chose between what they wanted to do and what they were supposed to do. So I thought that was quite worth bringing up. You know, this is the kind of thing that we're looking to have happen when Uranus is in this degree, that we're going to be given a choice between what we are told is the right thing to do, but we feel it's not. No, that doesn't feel right. It might sound right, but it doesn't feel right. And it could be the other way around. Oh, that feels great. But actually, when I think it through, that's not right. So the juxtaposition of these two aspects of being may well come up for a rather quick and perhaps shocking, rebellious decision as we go into that sort of energy as to choose between things. Now I'm going to read you what Mark Edmund Jones says on this point. A battle between the swords and the torches. This is a symbol of the eternal struggle between the practical necessities or transient competitions of life on the one hand, and the motives and meanings which give them direction and order on the other, as here emphasized on the world stage. Man survives and gains a genuine self-fulfillment as he aligns himself with the cause of enlightenment, while yet respecting the manifestations of might. The key word is resolution. When positive, the degree is high organizational skill and an ability to bring the magic of understanding to any specific difficulty. And when negative, a loss of self-competency through the conflicting compulsions of necessity and desire. Necessity and desire, there you have it. Now this particular degree is my nadir, my IC. So this is a lot to do with what makes me feel secure and safe. And on the one hand, there's necessity, and on the other hand, there's desire, and it's a constant friction in my life. And it has been forever. I know what I should be doing, and I know what I want to do. And sometimes I go one way, sometimes I go the other way. And eventually I ended up in the right place, because only now, after years and years of travelling, almost 60 years of not really feeling at home anywhere, I eventually found myself in the right place, which is a place where I can actually feel this is where I need to be. This is the necessity for me to do my work on the one hand, and it is actually what makes me feel free on the other. So I've actually got both things worked out now, finally, after many years of restlessness. So I think that's what we're looking to do, to try and square the circle, to try and find a place of being in your life where what needs to be and what you want to be actually are one and the same. And I'm reminded of some teachings from Hazrat Inayat Khan on this topic. He's the Sufi guy that brought my order into being. And he more or less said this, that all of the clashings and bangings of the world are caused by just one thing. And that's basically that each of us is trying to find our place where we feel we belong. And when we find that, we can be at peace. But until we find that, there is no peace. And the suggestion that that place is geographical, I think, is quite meaningful. It may not be in every situation. Perhaps you're happy to die where you were born. But most of us move, really. Most of us move away from the family home to find our own home. And I think that the decision to move on and move on and move on until such time as you're actually in alignment, where you are and what you are in alignment. Until then, I think there's an inevitability of restlessness.